Hey everyone, in today's content we've got a nifty little experiment. This is a custom Crit Reap Chieftain, and I gotta say that I'm actually really happy about this character. What I mean by this is that the character ended up being relatively thick, while also being capable of delivering decent damage, as we are gonna see from Assyrian Exarch, Eater of Worlds, Sirus, Maven, and overall their fights. So before we jump into the thickness, let's discuss the why and how we got to this point. For starters, I've been meaning to build a custom Crit Chieftain for a while now. My first attempt was back during Harvest, I believe, where I tried to use Way of Conviction and Purifying Flame on a Shaper two-handed sword with intrinsic custom crit. That was terrible. As time went on, I kept messing around in PoE trying to nail this concept, but nothing really stuck. However, the longer I waited for this to work, PoE changed during that time frame. Nerfs, mana cost changes, defensive buffs, masteries, etc. So after slacking on this idea for a while, I finally decided to tackle the build during this league. And it's mostly thanks to the existence of Ashes of the Stars, the unique amulet that drops from the Eater of Worlds. This nifty little amulet enables a couple of funky things in the character, as we'll see in a bit on the gear and skill tree portion of the video. However, before we leave this intro and get into the meaty stuff, we've got two topics to quickly go over. First is that I am using Awakened Custom Critical Strike as my only source of cooldown recovery rate in the build. This means that we can push our attack speed on Cyclone up to 7.5 attacks per second. Anything above that number will break the proc rate from Custom Critical Strike. So it is in our best interest to get attack speed as close to 7.5 attacks per second as possible. Now, you can obviously push this further if you invest into more cooldown recovery rate on the gear, but I chose not to go there. Partially because I am lazy and also because that would have made gearing up a bit harder. But if you want to invest into more cooldown recovery rate and also get more attack speed, that is up to you. Secondly, we are using Reap, or rather Anomalous Reap, which is gonna cost life to be casted. Thanks to the beautiful cost penalties introduced in 3.15, every time the spell is casted on a critical strike, it's gonna cost us life. Life cost that is also getting multiplied a little bit through the support gems on the setup, which is not too big of a deal since we leech life thanks to the Ascendancy, but there are times in which my character's life pool is not filled up and the life leech alone is doing a terrible job of recovering the spent life. This is because I have not invested in life recovery rate, or rather, life leech recovery rate. This can be mended through harvest enchantments for Jewel Implicits. And I didn't go there mostly because I am lazy, but also because I am done playing this. But in your case, do not sleep on that. But with all of that said, don't forget to subscribe and let's dive into a really fun character now. Alright then, so let's begin with the gear. First is the amulet, which is Ashes of the Stars, and we need the maximum roll for reservation efficiency, and as high quality for skill gems as possible. This amulet is mandatory, as it is gonna enable us to use multiple auras while also enabling some extra damage thanks to the quality gains, especially for Anomalous Reap as it's gonna gain a hefty chunk of crit chance thanks to Ashes of the Stars. Next is the body armor. Our goal with this build is to cap crit chance in order to fire spells every time we attack. To achieve this, we are gonna need a body armor with attack crit, as high as possible alongside resistances, life, and we are also crafting block chance for attacks on it. You'll see why pretty soon. Next up are the gloves, which are Command of the Pit, with an attack crit corrupted implicit. In order to get the arcane surge on a spell hit from the gloves, we gotta socket a Hypnotica Jewel. Mine has life, chaos resistance, and elemental penetration as a corrupted implicit. Now comes the weapon, and things are about to get funky from this point onward. I am using a rune dagger with as much crit chance, attack speed, crit multi, and +1 level to all physical spell skill gems. I also applied an elemental damage quality enchantment, and to top it off, I crafted hits can't be evaded on it. Now, before we move on, this one is gonna be really difficult to replicate. The crux of this slot is pretty much based around three things: as much crit chance, attack speed, and hits can't be evaded on the weapon. And you'll have to go from there. If the weapon is a scepter or a dagger, +1 level of all fizz spells, or even all spells, or spell damage, added damage to spells, crit chance for spells, fire damage, etc. If it's a thrusting one-hand sword, fizz as extra fire, elemental penetration, or area damage from Shaper are good as well. That is of course if you cannot get something similar to mine. Anyways, for the helmet, I know that I sound like a broken record by now, but we want a synthesized base with socketed skill gems, get a 92% cost and reservation multiplier, to which we are gonna spam deafening essences of loathing until we hit life and resistances. And to top it off, we want a +1 to maximum blood charges enchantment. Now for the belt, I am using the Tactician with a corrupted implicit for increased maximum life and crit multi during any flask effect. The important one here is life. Anything else is just a bonus. If you don't want to use this, a Darkness Enthroned hosting 2 Thick Abyss Jewels is also nice, but make sure that they have as much crit chance as possible. Moving on to the boots, we are gonna need something quote-unquote standard, as in we are gonna want life, movement speed, resistances, etc. And we are gonna use Icors to get Visas extra fire from the Eater of Worlds and movement speed from the Searing Exarch. And to top it off, this slot also needs an elemental penetration enchantment. Moving on to the rings, one has elemental weakness on hit, life and resistances, and the other one has life, crit chance, chaos resistance and intelligence. However, both are gonna need minimum power charges, and we also need to craft negative mana cost for channeling skills on one of them. Finally, for the gear, we've got the shield. An energy shield base with as much block chance, life, resistances and +1 level to all physical spell skill gems. Since mine had an open prefix, I slammed a Crusader Exalt to guarantee the damage per 1% chance to block attack damage modifier, though spell damage can be better, up to you. As for flasks, I've got a Wise Oak, a Sulfur and an Elixir of the Unbroken Circle. This one is really nice during mapping, as we don't have to stop and cast Enduring Cry to generate endurance charges, because this one during its 8-second duration continuously generates endurance charges, and this is gonna allow us to use Immortal Call relatively often, you know, for damage purposes. But that should be it for the gear, which is really funky but also quite nice for this entire setup. Everything is playing a role in here, which is gonna leave little room for options, but with the results I got playing the character, I'd say that the overly specific gear earned their spot. So now let us discuss the skill tree. Alright, so this is a level 95 chieftain that did not side with any bandits. However, if you could level this one up to 97 and get some extra damage or life, or heck even call to arms, that would be optimal. As for the Ascendancy, Namaju's Flame Advance, Hinekora's Dead Fury, Ramako Sun's Light and Valako Storm's Embrace. Alright, now for the actual passives, first we gonna spec into Avatar of Fire. Between this Keystone and the Ascendancy, we convert 100% of physical damage to fire, though we can only deal fire damage from this point onward. But at the end of the day, that is the point, right? And we are also gonna spec into Iron Will, since it's right there and it's a chunk of damage that we cannot say no to. Anyways, we've also got 3 major goals to achieve in this skill tree. The first one is Pseudo Aura stacking, and to achieve this we take Sovereignty in the Templar area and Champion of the Chaos between Marauder and Duelist. And don't forget the extra reservation node. The second goal is capping block chance for spells and attacks with Versatile Combatant. With this Keystone we cap block chance for spells and attacks to 50% and also get a 2% chance to block spell damage per 1% over capped attack block chance. By using Testudo, a shield, a mastery, the bodycraft, the thick roll on the shield, a Watcher's Eye and prodigious defense on a large cluster jewel, we can achieve max block chance for both spells and attacks. And lastly, we are missing out on a lot of crit chance and some quality of life, which we are gonna get through cluster jewel setups. The first large cluster jewel has 8 passives alongside Cremator, Widespread Destruction and Smoking Remains. The other large cluster jewel has 8 passives as well, with Martial Prowess, Prodigious Defense and Advanced Guard. Now for the 4 medium clusters, which are using the exact same notable combination, Quick Getaway and Basics of Pain. If possible, try to get attributes, chaos resistance or harvest enchantments on these ones. Besides all of this, we also grab any life and damage that we can along the way. We've got plenty of that, if you noticed. However, now it's time to talk about regular jewels, and we are obviously gonna get funky with them, starting with Forbidden Jewels. These are allocating Flawless Savagery from the Berserker Ascendancy, which is gonna give you crit chance, crit multi and added fist damage if you have dealt a crit recently. We also use a Watcher's Eye with attack block chance with Determination and elemental penetration with Zealotry. However, damage against enemies on consecrated ground while affected by Zealotry is also pretty nice. The rest of the jewels have increased maximum life alongside increased damage mods, intelligence, dexterity, attack speed, strength, crit chance, resistances, etc. It is a mashup of modifiers, but modifiers the build requires to function. But with all of that out of the way, let's wrap up this really fun adventure. I am actually really proud of this character, and I really cannot overstate how long I've been meaning to build something like this, a custom Crit Chieftain build. And when I told you that short story during the intro, I meant it. I attempted a Chieftain custom Crit during Harvest. It was terrible. In fact, that abomination was so bad, I had to respec into something completely different. Granted, a lot of things have changed since then. Harvest came and went, then again and got lobotomized. Reap was introduced in 3.14 alongside Exsanguinate, though I don't recall Reap being this good back then, but maybe I didn't pay enough attention during Ultimatum. Anyways, a nerf wave hit in 3.15 and we all know what happened after that. 3.16 tried to mend some of those changes with defensive buffs, a mechanical rework for reservations, and the introduction of masteries. And nowadays with 3.17, which didn't actually have sweeping changes besides a nerf for cast and crit damage, we saw the introduction of cool new uniques, one of which is central in this build. That item being Ashes of the Stars, which is a relatively common item. At one point it spiked in price, but eventually it settled back down. And that's pretty cool because the amulet enables a lot of cool interactions. The extra quality, the reservation efficiency, and the extra level 4 skills are such a nice combination that motivated me to put this build together. And I know that this build is not like the best thing ever. The defenses it has are pretty decent, and on the other hand the damage isn't super amazing, but you know what? When you combine those defenses with this character's damage output, I think that the final package is decent enough. At the end of the day, I actually had a lot of fun figuring out the ins and outs of this character, ironing out the kinks, and at the place where I wrapped this one up I feel really satisfied with the build. It was one of those times where the character felt good all the way through, and I guess that was enough for me. But with all of this said, that's gonna be it for me today. I leave you with some gameplay and some sick royalty-free music. By the way, if you got to this point in the video, feel free to recommend me some music for background purposes. I like the songs I put normally, but I feel like we can use some variety in that department. Anyways, take care, stay safe, and we'll catch up again sometime soon. Peace out.
Scurry, scurry. Do what I say. A cascade of pain.
Death made real.
Stand still. How?
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Arrogant toy. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Take this. Stand still. Stand still.
I'll be fine.
Gaze into the abyss. Gaze into the abyss.
I cannot do this yet.
Power.